If you take the internet's word for it, you might believe that flow is a semi-mystical state in which productivity is just magically supercharged. Surprisingly, that's not entirely wrong. My name is Seth. I'm a full-time fantasy author. I make YouTube videos for other authors and aspiring authors because there are a lot of people who aren't making it out there, and I don't want you to be one of them. Over the past few years, the term flow has gained a lot of popularity. Originally coined by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the term flow is a descriptor of optimal experience. And I want to talk this week about how flow can supercharge your writing. A lot of people who talk about flow talk about it in a almost reverent, holy sort of way. But the truth is that flow is something that all of us experience to varying degrees, depending on how intentional we are about our experiences. Now, there are some people who have only experienced flow a few times in their life. For somebody in that situation, those memories of those flow experiences are probably some of their favorite. On the other hand, there are people who live what are called high flow lifestyles and have optimized their lives for flow and thus live in that state of optimal experience the majority of the time. The question is, how do we become like those people? Well, first, let's talk a little bit about what flow is. Flow is this state where time seems to get all wibbly wobbly. It either stretches out, vanishing until you can't feel it anymore, and making you feel like the world is passing you by in slow motion, or it constricts, and a few hours might pass in a flash. During flow, a person's attention tends to be entirely occupied by whatever it is they're doing. And things like creativity and learning become much, much easier. There are a huge number of benefits to flow, and we'll talk about those later in the week. But today, I want to talk about what's really important. Where and when does flow appear? For a writer, flow often appears when you're deep in the middle of your creative work, when you're working on your manuscript, whether it's writing or editing, when you're so involved in the process that nothing else exists in the world. But getting into that state, finding that trigger for flow, can often feel random, like a roll of the dice. Some days you sit down and you start work and it just comes. And then other days you sit down to start work and you're nothing but distracted and you feel like you can't get anything done, leading to incredible frustration. So why is it that sometimes we enter flow and sometimes we don't? Really, flow comes down to three distinct things. The first is clarity of goals. If we want to enter a flow state, we have to know exactly what it is that we're trying to achieve. If you don't know, or if your goals are not properly aligned with what it is you're doing, then entering flow becomes impossible. Because in the back of your mind, you know that you're not going to be able to achieve what you were setting out to achieve. And that blocks flow. The second important piece of flow is what I like to call the skills difficulty balance. That is to say, your skill level has to be matched appropriately with the level of challenge of whatever it is you're doing. If you're trying to complete a task that is too difficult for your skill level, then you're never going to be able to enter flow because it's going to be too frustrating as you're trying to complete it. On the other hand, if the thing you're trying to do is too easy, you'll actually get bored, and it will be impossible for that task to hold your attention, making it impossible for you to enter flow. So not only do you need clarity of goal, you need to know what you're trying to achieve, but you also need to have the correct balance of skill versus difficulty. But these two things by themselves are not enough. The final thing you need for flow is immediate feedback. You need to be able to understand whether what you are doing is getting you closer to your goal or sending you further away. And if you don't have this immediate feedback, it becomes very difficult to create flow because there's no way of knowing whether you're going to make it to your goal or not. And that will pull your mind away from the task at hand. So why would we want to be in flow as a writer? Well, it's because flow is where you are most creative, most productive, and have the highest level of enjoyment. There's a lot of research on this, and there's a book called Flow that I highly recommend by Csikszentmihalyi. The audiobook is a little bit more accessible than the physical book because it's actually a series of lectures he gave around flow. And it covers a lot of the material that's in the book, but the book is a little bit more rigorous and explains his research more fully. So depending on what kind of reader you are, you might like the audiobook or you might like the physical book. Both are fantastic, and I highly recommend them. The application of flow to your writing can be a huge boost, both in reducing stress and in increasing your ability to write well. If you're looking to improve your ability to write and to improve the quality of your writing sessions, this is absolutely the place to start. I will say that there's a huge amount of sort of peripheral information on the internet about flow, and I have gone through almost all of it because I'm a little bit obsessed with this concept. I would say that the majority of it probably isn't helpful, and that you should really start with understanding sort of the basic principles, which is what we're going over this week. I'll put a link to both the audiobook and the physical book in the description. But I do have a question for you, because I'm really curious about this. When you think about your favorite experiences throughout your life, your favorite activities, based on what I described, do you think that they're flow activities? Let me know, yes or no, in the comments down below. And don't forget to let me know what the activity was as well.